Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to revisit solutioning in the age of AI. So, solutioning is an evergreen problem. It was an evergreen problem. It probably still is. The idea of solutioning, our definition, is it's when product comes to you and they say, build this thing. And they don't tell you the problem that you're trying to solve and the outcomes that they want. They say, build this thing. And you build the thing to spec, as it were, and inevitably they come back and they say, "Oh, well, it doesn't do this, that, and the other thing. So it doesn't achieve the outcomes that I was hoping for, expecting." And
Mm,
you're like, "Well, no, of course not, because that's not what you told me to build. You told me to build this thing."
yeah,
And that's got the term. It's called solutioning. It's when somebody else comes to you and says, "Here's the solution. Build the thing," and you don't understand the problem.
right.
And so we've historically said push back on that.
Yeah, it's like I feel like this is like to begin with. It's like a junior versus senior versus principal engineering concept,
Mm-hmm.
where it, now as a principal engineer, if somebody came to me and said build the thing, I would be like, hey, back off. I would look at this story first because it's more like, especially I think in one episode we were saying always like ask a question. Like
Mm-hmm.
if there's a story that you pick up that hasn't been discussed, then it's not ready yet. Like don't just
Right.
take it literally. And that the engineers who took things literally, like, oh, well, it wasn't the acceptance criteria. I think those will be the people who eventually get like um, fired because yeah, it doesn't really make any sense for someone to hand you just a ticket like it's like a restaurant order in this particular industry, because the idea is you need to be understanding the bigger picture around what's being asked on this thing. So there would never be a story in which somebody should hand you something and you just go okay and just start working on it. There should always be some discussion, and if there's already discussion done on it, then you presumably you would have already understood that information, that this is the bigger thing that they're asking here, and you wouldn't run into those edge cases
Right.
or the cases where products go in, oh, I'm so confused that you delivered the thing that wasn't asked for. Because as you're looking at it, you would look at it and go, hey, uh, so you realize whenever I deliver this, it's not going to have this and this, right? You know, those conversations should be had well before you start writing code.
Right. Now the question is, how do you treat AI? Do you allow AI, as you work with AI, do you as the developer say, hey, build me this thing? Or do you say, hey, here's my problem, here's the outcomes I want, and
Yeah.
build the thing? What do you do?
This is a good question because it bleeds into prompt engineering essentially, and
Mm-hmm.
how people use AI in general. Um, because everyone I talk to uses AI a little bit different. And we have
Mm-hmm.
this weekly meet, another company I'm working with, that will use if you use Claude, you can use like the insights command to see how you're using Claude, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll send it back to this person, and he kind of compares and sees how people are using it, which is kind of a neat way to see habits that you're any kind of thing where you're saying check your work, or are you sure this is right, or any kind of repetitive things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so prompt engineering in general differs between different people, and I know some people who do what you're talking about, which is they solution it and they tell AI exactly what to build. Here's my 20-point plan on what to do. And that's fine. If it works for them, that's great. For me, I don't do that actually. I just say, here's a complaint someone gave me. Like I'll start with a problem. A customer says, oh, it's buggy in this particular responsive mode. Like if you're on a big screen less than 900 pixels wide, then it does this weird thing where you can't click this button, enter. I don't say how to fix it, or what libraries to use, if they need to use different responsive libraries that are standard or anything like that. I just say fix it, and then I watch and see how it fixes it. And then when it says I'm done, I go, well, okay, we'll boot it up locally and let's confirm. Like I want you to resize the window and make sure it looks good. But I don't even tell it to resize the window. I just say confirm locally that it works before we push it up. So I'm very, I try to treat it as the engineer. I don't tell it how to solve the problem personally. And then there's some people in between. I think you mentioned before the show that you're a little bit of both. Like so.
Well, yeah, yeah. I don't mean that I'm a little bit of, I do it both ways.
Mm,
So there are times, right? I'll get a bug report, And I think I'm a very, you'll be shocked to know that I'm a very incrementalist in both my thinking and the way I
Mm.
work. And so what I will often do is I will say, here's a bug report, do an investigation and determine what the problem is, and add that result to the ticket. And so it'll
Hmm.
say, oh, well, I've investigated and I think this is the problem and blah, 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 blah. And I say, cool, now do the work. And then it will go
Yeah.
and do the work. Uh, but, and it, and occasionally the work it comes up with is I don't agree with. I'm like, this is a bad solution. And I go back and you look at what it determined the problem was. You're like, look, there's a better way to do this. You tell it the better way. But again, it's still, it's, somebody else has come up with the problem and the description of what the problem is, and I just say, okay, do the analysis. Uh, the thing that I think I do that is different than most people is I want that analysis as an artifact.
Hmm.
I don't want it to say, look at this ticket, fix the problem, right, and then come back to me with like here's the MR or the PR, like this is the solution. It's like no. I want you to create that intermediate artifact of
Yeah.
the description.
I like that actually. I do something similar here. We have like a skill for investigate task where it will
Mm,
go through and pull the body of the Jira ticket. It will pull conversations in Slack around the discussions around that ticket, and then anything from Confluence that already documented that particular feature area that we're touching, and then it'll build out. It'll investigate, and then after that, there's a build plan step for an investigated task that will build out the plan of what we want to do. But we actually just don't commit that. We just use that actually just gets deleted and discarded after we're done. But actually committing that, not to the repo per se, but like actually just adding the small MD file to the story, might
right.
be, yeah, we're not doing that. And I kind of like the way that you're documenting it there. That way someone can go back and look and go, oh, this is what they were basing it off of. Um, or even Claude could go back through and be like, we see this was implemented and marked done, and this was the plan they used. And I looked through their steps and I can see why that was the wrong way to implement it or something. So I might change my process to include that.
Oh, good. Yeah, because I like doing it this way because then the explanation of the problem ends up in the description of the merge request. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the problem, this is the solution. And right now at work, we do a lot of, we have a checker bot. So you have whatever agent you want, but then there's a checker bot that whenever you try to do something, it will compare. And so
Yeah.
this results, because it's showing the plan, the checker bot knows what the plan was. It's like it knows why, more than just here's the bug and here's the solution. It's here's the bug, here's the analysis of how it's going to be solved, and then I've done the implementation. And that gives the checker bot, right? So I've got these two bots playing against each other, not against, working ping ponging, not playing
Yeah.
against. And it makes them, it gives them more context for it. And so
Yeah.
in that way, I'm sort of, I'm not solutioning the AI at all, the agent at all in that case. I'm like, hey, problem, goal, go. But because because I'm a very incrementalist, I'm always doing the iterative thing. Uh, create artifacts of every step along the way that you're going, and so that I find works really well. But then in the opposite way, when I'm doing something at the other end of the spectrum, I never have it come up with a giant plan. Like a thing that I'm doing this week, uh, Jira
Hmm.
ticket comes in, and I want it to, webhook, go scrape our internal logs, uh, throw that into a file, zip the file, attach it to the ticket, and now the logs are a permanent artifact, part of the ticket, so that the AI can now get it without having to go back because you can't keep logs forever, but
Hmm.
also other stuff. It's like okay, I had it go in a very incremental fashion. I'm like okay, write me a script that scrapes the ticket details, and then write me a script. Way back, God, over 25 years ago, I spent time doing ETLs as a DBA, and it was all steps, and it was
Hmm.
all incremental. That you wanted them all to be idempotent, so you could just keep rerunning the thing. And so this is always how I approach anything like this, where it's like, okay, I need a script that's going to get the details, and then I need a script that's going to get the log, and then a script that's going to just a statement that's going to zip it, and then another script that's going to attach it, and then I need a controlling script that's going to call all these things in order and pipe them
Yeah.
together. And so each of these becomes an artifact, and it's each of them, because it's so incremental, it's very easy to check. It's like, okay, I've got this script to give it, the Jira, the key, and the ticket number, and it spits out the details. And then the next ticket is, well, if you have these details, can it scrape the logs? So, all right, cool. And then the next one is, boop, 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 boop. And I don't tell it, like, I have the solution in my head, and I tell it to do each incremental step that I would normally do.
Yeah.
But in that case, it's a different case, because when you get solution, right, there's this giant disconnect between you, the developer, and the customer. You've got,
Yeah.
right, if you've been solutioned by a product person, the product person talked to the customer, the product person decided what the solution was, you implement the solution, then the product person goes and shows it to the customer. In this case, I'm not solutioning the AI, because I am the customer. I say do this step and it does it, and then I say do the next step, or I change my mind, or whatever. But
Right.
like there's no space, there's no daylight between what the customer wants and what the AI is doing.
Right. I think it's the same. We're still acting in the same way of the progression of a junior engineer to senior to principal, where the main idea is that we want to reduce work that is incorrect. We want to make sure that the thing we're building,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason behind it, and that we've already done all the work to prove that out. So the main disconnect before is that there was no discussion. Like the artifact that existed before AI was the discussion on the thread or any specs on the Word document from discussions
Mm-hmm.
with product to understand what needed to be done. So there's the old world of doing things where that always needed to be done to understand that we're building the correct thing and pushing back to when we don't have everything understood, so that we can never get to the state in which we would release a
Mm-hmm.
product that doesn't serve all the needs that was required. And in the new flow where we're putting on the product hat or the customer hat, we need to also be doing the same checks, the iterative steps that you're taking. And I agree with those, which is essentially saying in between every step of the way, we have a deterministic flow that shows that we've done every checkbox state of the investigation of what features need to be had, what the end done state means, a way to check against everything we've done to prove that we've built, we've solved the problem. So if it's a
Mm-hmm.
customer complaint and we say build the thing, we need to know some deterministic thing which we can run over and over and over again to make sure that if it still passes, we definitely solve the problem. My example from earlier was the responsive nature of something. It was hiding a button. So if I can resize the window and the button still shows, and I can prove from a screenshot or any kind of Selenium test that the button is still visible and clickable,
Mm-hmm.
then it worked. And there's no argument to be had there about that. So if there was no regressions on other features and the thing that we tried to solve was solved, then we are done. And
Yeah.
so acting on that same state is essentially replicating that process. But I think that the kind of the gap that you're explaining is almost jumping from the junior aspect of, oh, work. Let me work on it without asking any questions, solve it even when I'm confused about, end states, and then just
Mm-hmm.
push it up, which is what happens if you just give a dumb model something without context.
Right. And along the same lines, the amount of work that the model will do, which you have to pay for,
Mm,
is also
yeah.
like, if you give it an open-ended problem, who knows what kind of a solution it's going to get, because
Yeah.
it could go hog wild. Whereas if you have it work incrementally, it's like, oh, well, the solution is going to be a bunch of text explaining what it thinks the solution is. And it's never going to get itself into a state where it's changing code and then watching the build, then failing the tests, and then changing the code and failing. Like,
Right.
that's where AI can really chew through your tokens. But you couldn't do that because it's working incrementally. Well, it can still do that, but it's harder.
Well, those checkpoints are important, and it kind of reminds me of the previous episode where we're talking about hourly based billing versus token based billing, where you can, if you want to, and if you want to give like somebody that you're paying hourly a really abstract problem and say, all right, I'm going to be back in 8 hours, I hope you got it, and then you come back in 8 hours and you were vague and they didn't get it done like you wanted to, and you're mad because you have to pay them, you're going to run into the exact same problem with token based billing. You give it an open-ended problem and you're not specific enough, and you don't have these steps that we're talking about with these checks in between to make sure you've done the things and you haven't regressed, then you're going to be a lot happier with the output. It's just about that iterative check. Each checkpoint's to make sure that you've done the main goal without breaking anything else.
Yes. Don't break other things.
Don't regress. Yeah.
So I think what we are saying is work incrementally, whether you're using AI or not, is always going to be safer and more effective and faster. Right? The old something is smooth is fast. I forget. Somebody
Well,
had
even the iteration itself will give more context to the thing the model you're working with. Just the fact that you iterated, it might look at the history and go, "Oh, I see where we're getting towards." So the iteration itself provides context.
Right, and it focuses and it exposes things that you may not have thought of. Right, if you tell the AI to do something and it comes back and it says, "I'm going to solve it by deleting everything,"
which it might do.
Which it might do. I have
the Thanos approach to delete half of it without asking you.
I have fed it vague. A thing that I have not had good success with is I'm going to feed it errors from my logs and tell it to fix the errors with no other context because I don't have any other context because I'm just randomly sampling errors in my logs. Fix them. That does not produce the results. That is very likely to produce this is a transient database issue and there's nothing you can do about it, so I'm just going to delete the warning.
Right. It's like saying, hey, I have a couple of dry patches of grass in my lawn. Random person, fix it no matter what you need to do. And you come back and everything's just paved over. You're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't mean to kill all the grass.
Yeah.
It's not a problem anymore.
Grass can't go, man. It's gone.
The Amelia Bedelia version.
Yes.
All right.
I think we should leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.